This module contains 5 topics, including this introduction. Topic 1.2, Planning and Homework, briefly mentions the preparations you need to make in the office and the considerations involved, including land use and land ownership, access permits, access points based on maps and aerial photos, information from local folks on history, and concerns regarding creek access, and so on. The planning is focused on a reconnaissance trip, not a sampling trip. This means that what you prepare and what you pack is not geared toward any sampling at this point. You might decide to take some measurements while you are out there reconnoitering. In this case, please refer to the appropriate sections in Module 2, Field Measurements. Topic 1.3, Getting Ready and Getting There, provides 3 checklists to help you when you pack your paperwork and equipment in preparation for a reconnaissance trip. There are also some tips on relevant records to capture when you are on your way to your sites. Topic 1.4, At the Site, takes you through the things you may want to record while investigating your potential sites. And finally, Topic 1.5 summarizes what the products of your reconnaissance activities should be. Click on a topic to start, or click the Next button to see them in order. This module applies to all types of stations, including streams and rivers, estuaries and wetlands, lakes and reservoirs, and bays and harbors. It does not apply to stations in open water. The important thing to remember is the purpose of the data to be collected. You may be selecting sites in a stream for the routine, fixed station ambient monitoring program, or for special projects that may include non-ambient type sites, such as outfalls or drainage ditches. Likewise, the health and safety of field and lab personnel must be foremost in your mind when it comes to site selection, site access, safety, and the potential dangers of highly contaminated samples. For the purposes of this training, it is assumed that selection of potential sites at the watershed and reach scales, as well as planning the trip route, has already occurred in the office. Click on a topic to start, or click the Next button to see them in order. Before you go out in the field, it is important to spend time in the office and meet people to find out who else knows about the watershed. If you find other people that know about your watershed and contact them, you may end up saving a lot of time. Talk to other agencies such as USGS, the Forest Service, Department of Fish and Game, Bureau of Land Management, flood control districts, water purveyors, and any other agency active in your area. Check out their records and their GIS layers and find out what they are able to share. In addition, talk to members of local communities and tribal councils. Find out if there are watershed groups that have done mapping or history projects or monitoring. See if anyone has walked the creek and recorded the presence of structures, outfalls, and other items that may affect your choice of sampling location. Gather information from local folks and police regarding safety concerns related to stream access. Scroll through the list to see different types of agencies and groups you may contact, or open the checklist file on your CD to find an extended list. You can get all types of information from these agencies and groups, including maps, aerial photos, GIS layers, studies and reports, history and old pictures. There are several types of land ownership: private, tribal, state, and federal. When you plan your access to remote sites in areas of open space, you will need to study your maps, aerial photos, and other GIS layers very carefully. It might be beneficial to talk to members of local communities and tribal councils and ask for local guides who know the trails when you do your first reconnaissance trip. Taking a flight above your watershed in a low-flying airplane may be the most cost-effective way to assess site accessibility in some cases. So, when do you need to ask for permission? Federal lands usually do not require permits, except for National Park Service. State parks may require permits, as well as local parks. Private and tribal properties always require permission to access the land. You can carry out your site selection process in 2 phases. First, find the sites for which ownership is known, and second, try to find adequate access points on lands that do not require permission, such as BLM, national forests, and so on. Most parks, state, regional, county, etc., are shown on CSAA or AAA maps. When you contact park personnel, check out if it is possible to get an envelope permit, that is, a permit that allows multiple entries over time and access to multiple sites managed by the issuing agency. In most situations, the land ownership in your watershed will be mixed. Sometimes you will need to access 2 or 3 different properties to reach the waterway, and you will need permission for each of them. If you do need to access private areas that require a landowner permit to assure representative coverage of your watershed, you can get ownership information at the county's assessor office. The Reconnaissance guidance document on your CD has a complete list of the assessor offices in California. There are several types of ownership maps you can use. Best known is the plat map book that shows boundaries, parcel numbers, tax lot numbers, acreage, etc. You may also need to play detective to find the contact information for the parcel owner. When you're trying to find the best time to do your reconnaissance, you may come up with different answers depending on the purpose of your monitoring. Remember, this is about reconnaissance trips, not sampling and field measurement trips. The picture on your screen, as downloaded from the USGS website, shows the flow discharge in a typical California stream as a function of time. This plot tells you when, during the hydrologic year, you are likely to find the peak flows, and when the stream flow is at its minimum. If you plan the timing of your reconnaissance activities to target the time you plan to monitor, you will be able to anticipate the flow conditions you are likely to find when you actually go there to collect samples. It's time to test your knowledge. Read the question, then click the Answer button to see the correct response. Click on a topic to start, or click the Next button to see them in order. You will need many items in the field with you, so it makes sense to pack them carefully before you leave. This list suggests things that relate to paperwork. Then there are the items that you want to have in your backpack. Note that the GPS unit may not work well in all locations, so you will always need hard copy maps as backup. If you are using the topo software on a laptop in the field, you will be able to generate your coordinates by placing your perceived position on the map. This is a good time to assure that you have all you need to protect your skin, block the sun, prevent hazards such as insect-transmitted disease, respond to exposures such as poison oak, and use other safeguards. Another very important field tip: never get separated from your water. And hang on to your lunch. What you see on your screen is a partial list. You can access the entire checklist in the Word file called Checklists on your CD and use it as a template to make your own lists. Next, you want to make sure that you have what you need on your person. This includes identification papers and proper clothing. In fact, when you are ready to schedule a trip, find a buddy. Never go alone. This is a very important safety issue. Click on the Go to Mounting an Expedition button to see generic steps and things to do when mounting a field expedition. Click on the Go to Checklists button for a collection of all checklists. Now that you are on the road, be sure to keep records of your driving using road names and/or numbers, odometer readings, landmarks, etc. Remember that others will need to find your sites based on your driving directions, so do what you can to help them get to the location. You can capture this information on a special data sheet or as part of the Field Reconnaissance data sheet. Please see more information on data sheets in Topic 1.4.2. Provide detailed driving directions and a description of how to reach the site, and include as much information as possible. Start by naming the nearest main highways or roads and provide all street names and crossroads that are relevant. It's extremely helpful to include distances between points. For example, include distances from a turn to the next road. Include mile markers and easy-to-see landmarks in the directions. Also include records of safe parking locations and trails to the sites. Remember that it is not sufficient to provide driving directions to a site using another site as a starting point, since the sampling order can change. Also, attach a map showing major cross streets and the location of the site on the line that shows the creek. If the site is a boat site, provide the boat site or boat launch name, phone number, and hours of operation of the launch facility where possible and appropriate. In your notes, list any features that may have to be considered to gain access. For example, construction sites can temporarily block access. Sandbars can hinder a boat from reaching the site, especially at low tide. Sloped concrete channel walls might require rappelling, or seasonal migration of wild animals might lead to temporary closures, for example, salmon runs. In some cases, a hand-drawn map showing highly visible features can be very helpful. Click on a topic to start, or click the Next button to see them in order. Naming and IDing the stations can be done when a site looks promising enough to merit being named, or it can be done in the office before leaving for the reconnaissance trip. The swamp station naming conventions for streams and rivers have placeholders for both station name and station ID. The station name is what the regional board uses. Station names can be as long as needed and can include a stream name or not. Examples include San Gregorio at Highway 1 or Chabot Park. The station ID is a combination of 6 characters unique to the region. For example, WIL 070 or SMA 020. The first 3 characters in the naming conventions used in the San Francisco Bay region are the first 3 letters of the stream name. For example, WIL for Wildcat Creek. For 2 worded stream names, the first letter of the first word is used, followed by the first 2 letters of the second word. For example, for San Mateo Creek, the S would be used for San, and the MA for Mateo, making SMA the ID for San Mateo Creek. The last 3 characters are numbers, sequenced from the mouth going upstream. Numbers are initially designated in increments of 10 to allow for adding of new stations between 2 existing ones without disrupting the sequence. For example, SMA 019 was added for a location just downstream of SMA 020 when used for monitoring the first time. To generate location entities that are unique to the entire state, swampers create an extended station ID using the 6-digit station ID combined with hydrologic unit information. For further detail, click the button to go to the Station ID section in Common Element D, Information Management. Any reconnaissance data sheet that you construct will work well if it captures the essential information for all future uses of the station. It can also be augmented with information that you need on the ground to communicate with your crews within the project. A data sheet can be constructed to help you fill out the information needed at each phase of your reconnaissance. This information will include things you record at the office, information gathered on the way to the site, and, more importantly, information you capture while you are at the site. For example, if you selected a site at the office and wrote down the latitude and longitude coordinates, you will need that sheet in the field to identify your station and confirm the coordinates or update them if needed. In the field, you can use the hard copy or capture the information in a spreadsheet on your PDA. When you record information at the site, look for channel characteristics, types of fisheries habitats such as riffles, pools, or runs in the vicinity of your position. Also look for vegetation, flow control structures, and other man-made features. Think about the monitoring activities this site will allow. See Topic 1.4.4 for more information about this. Capture the coordinates of your position using a GPS unit. If you take photographs, log them in the datasheet as well. Another important function of the datasheet is to capture the exact location of a spot you recommend for a specific field activity. For example, water sample collection or deployment of data loggers. Again, this information can only be gathered while you are in the field, and it needs to be shared in detail with others. For activities such as zone deployment or trash assessment that require consecutive visits to the exact same spot, make a drawing and describe the exact spot in a way that will allow each of the crews to perform the activity at the same spot. You might also need to create a monument, for example by marking a tree or driving a stake at a specific location. But first, please make sure that you have permission to do that. There are many other types of information you can capture while in the field. When you wade, you may want to make notes of slippery rocks, drop-offs in the stream, holes you almost fell into, and any other observations. Use the comment area or the back of your datasheet, or use a dedicated field notebook. Take pictures of obvious landmarks if you want to warn others about wading hazards. We cannot say enough about the value of a clear visual. Pictures can show detail that is hard to describe in words. They can provide orientation and document landmarks or monuments in a way that will help others identify a specific point if needed. You can show the station location with an object, preferably an object that provides spatial scale information such as a yardstick. Make sure you record and convey the exact direction in which your camera is aimed, both in terms of east-west, or degrees on the compass, and in relation to left and right bank. Always identify the left and right bank when you are looking downstream. If you take photographs, don't forget to log them in your data sheet as well. As you use the Field Reconnaissance data sheet to capture information that can only be gleaned while you are in the field, look for features that will help you determine what types of monitoring activities the site will support. It is a good idea to have many types of monitoring activities conducted close to each other if the site allows, and if they can be sequenced in a way that will not have them interfere with each other. Look for a variety of habitats, because some activities will be performed at different habitats. For example, activities that require different substrate characteristics. Look at the site with the eye of a health and safety officer to determine if access hazards or vandalism may be a problem. Find the high water marks if you can, and imagine where the water will be at peak flows. Look at the paths that lead to the water and determine which ones will get you to a representative part of the flow. Look for outfalls or confluences with tributaries and find access points either upstream of them or far enough below their mixing zone. Determine if this would be an appropriate site to deploy data loggers for unattended continuous monitoring. Look for areas of deposition of fine sediments to determine if this site would be suitable for sediment sampling. Look for riffles that conform with the riffle selection criteria for macroinvertebrate sampling in terms of substrate size, embeddedness, actual or projected current velocity, and so on. Find stream segments that are suitable for measuring stream flow with a float, and/or good cross-sections for flow measurements with current velocity meters. Finally, if you are looking for a site with an existing stream gauging station, find the station and check its condition. You can find out more by contacting the agency listed on the structure of the station. Click on the button for further explanation about representative locations within the stream channel. Click on a topic to start, or click the Next button to see them in order. The Watershed folder will contain all overview information collected about the watershed you are studying. In other words, it will have information that is relevant to more than one site, and there may be a number of site dossiers appended to the main folder. The contents of these dossiers are described in the next screen. When you check the contents of your Watershed folder as you deliver the product, be sure to include hard copy maps with actual travel routes, and roads marked on the map, prints of GIS layers prepared for that watershed, and the location of the electronic files holding them. Finally, include notes on points that were not chosen and the reasons why. The Site Dossier is the culmination of your efforts, and should be assembled carefully for each site that looks promising enough to merit being monitored. Please keep in mind that swampers may need to expand into new sites or replace sites between monitoring rotations, so everything you have learned can be helpful in the unforeseen future. The Site Dossier has to maintain clear linkage to its Watershed folder and refer the reader to watershed-wide information that is also relevant to this site. The final Site Dossier will include information captured in all office and field data sheets, as well as the file names and location of spreadsheets and databases developed from them. Information will include the following: land ownership information relevant to accessing the site, contact information for all people relevant to site access, contact information for all people relevant to data and information about the site, conversation records, maps, pictures, notes, summaries of considerations used and rationale employed, driving directions and directions to the nearest hospital and alternative routes to it. Your reconnaissance activities may be very simple and straightforward if you do it for a small project in a watershed you already know well, and you are merely locating access points to identify potential stations for a specific purpose, like sampling of muddy sediments. On the other extreme, you may be the lead reconnoitering person for a large program, such as the entire Regional Board's SWAMP program. This advice is especially relevant to larger programs, but is valuable to any monitoring project. Here are some important pointers. 1. Organization of information is extremely important. Do not try to learn it the hard way. Use checklists for what you need to capture, and prepare placeholders to plug these bits of information in. If you capture information on the back of envelopes, you will spend a great deal of time trying to organize it later. 2. More time spent in office evaluations will yield the best and, more importantly, the most efficient use of time, thus minimizing the actual amount of field reconnaissance. However, be prepared to get inaccurate, incomplete, or conflicting information when you talk to different folks during your office reconnaissance work, and try to access independent sources of information. 3. It really takes a few people to do this stuff really well. There's a lot of information to sort through, and having a few motivated people on the team can allow you to divide or partition the work into usable groupings. 4. You can't predict nature. Just when you think a site is sampleable, nature lets you know that it has control. Be aware that some sites will end up dry, flooded, or inaccessible. 5. Don't be too rigid in your scheduling of site visits. If you plan too far ahead, you will just spend more time redoing schedules. 2 to 3 weeks is a realistic amount of time for scheduling ahead.